How to make gasoline when the pumps are dry, the roads are graveyards, and the only thing louder than the silence is your stomach growling. The world didn't end in one big cinematic boom. No mushroom cloud, no flash of white light, just a slow, rotting fade out. One day the gas stations had temporarily closed the signs. Next day, the windows were smashed, pumps ripped apart, tanks bone dry. Now, months later, the roads are nothing but a parking lot of skeletal cars, each one a memorial to someone who thought traffic would eventually clear up. It didn't. You're out of fuel. And not the, gotta walk to the store kind. The, if I don't get this generator running by nightfall, I'll be cooking rat stew in the dark while the feral dogs circle the camp kind. You tried siphoning from abandoned cars. Bad idea. Whatever's in those tanks now is more like liquid rust with a hint of corpse smell. Try trading for a few liters from that guy in the rusted shopping cart caravan, but he wanted both of your boots and half your teeth. You passed. The air smells like wet metal and old ash. Somewhere in the distance, there's the clink of a can being kicked, and then nothing. That nothing is the worst part. So here's the deal. You're going to make your own gasoline. Yes, make it. Not the clean, sweet-smelling kind you used to pump at the corner Shell station while wondering if your debit card would go through. No, this is the kind of gasoline that smells like it might dissolve your eyebrows if you sniff it too hard. The kind the EPA would have nightmares about. But it'll burn. It'll keep the generator running. It'll keep you alive. And if we do this right, and by right I mean with minimal explosions and only a mild chance of poisoning, you might even get enough extra to power up that rusty dirt bike in the shed. Because walking is for people who aren't being hunted. Stick with me, because by the end of this little chemistry lesson from hell, you'll know how to brew the lifeblood of the old world from the carcass of the new. First, let's talk about why this is worth the risk, because make no mistake, this is going to be dangerous. Not cutting your finger on a tuna can, dangerous. More like accidentally creating an improvised Molotov inside your own shelter, dangerous. Right now, your little outpost is running on candle stubs and luck. The nights are colder than they should be for this time of year, which means either climate's still unraveling or you've lost the ability to feel your toes. Your radio, your only connection to whatever's left of the outside world, sits dead on the table, its battery pack a brick without a spark of power. And then there's the predators. Not wolves, not even the human kind you used to cross the street to avoid. No, the ones who can smell burning fuel from a mile away. The ones who know a running generator means food, shelter, maybe even medicine. They're hungry, they're patient, they don't knock. Without gasoline, you're just meat in a pile of broken bricks. With gasoline, you're still meat, but at least you're meat with options. Now, there are a lot of ways to make a flammable liquid. You could mash potatoes until they ferment and run a still. You could light up some old plastics and scrape the oily residue off your shelter walls. That's a real thing, by the way, but you'll want to keep a bucket of water and your will updated. But today, we're going for something closer to the real deal. Crude oil's bastard cousin, pulled out of the skeletons of civilization. We're talking about cracking down salvage into something you can pour into a tank and pray over. We're talking heat, distillation, separating the light fractions from the sludge until you get something yellowish and mean. It won't be perfect, it won't even be good, but it will burn. And in this new world, that's the closest thing you'll get to magic. So, gather your courage, your wits, and whatever fireproof gloves you can find, because in the next section, we're heading out into the wasteland to collect the bones we'll need for our unholy resurrection of fuel. And if you're lucky, you'll come back with your eyebrows still attached. Morning. If you can call the weak, jaundiced glow through the clouds morning, you zip your coat, which is really just a leather jacket that smells like it died twice, and you step into the street. Every breath tastes like rust and burnt insulation. The first thing you need is raw material, the lifeblood we're going to twist into gasoline. In the old world, people called it feedstock. Now it's called anything that might burn without killing you instantly. Use motor oil, old fuel, certain plastics, maybe a stray barrel of industrial something that wasn't labeled in skulls. You know exactly where to go. The skeleton of an old repair shop 2 streets over. The front windows are gone, the inside's a snow globe of dust, and somewhere inside, you swear you hear the faint chime of a wrench falling. Could be the wind, could be someone already scavenging, could be a rat the size of a toaster. You step over the corpse of a hydraulic lift, boots crunching on shattered safety glasses. Behind the counter, jackpot, a row of grimy gallon jugs, labels peeling but still legible. Engine oil, SAE 10W30. Beautiful. Not gasoline yet, but with the right heat and patience, we can coax those hydrocarbons into a meaner shape. Next, you dig through a stack of dented barrels out back. 2 of them are bone dry, one smells like paint thinner, and the last one, that smell. Sharp, chemical, a little sweet, leftover solvent. Dangerous stuff, but in the right proportion, it'll thin our homemade brew into something an engine can actually swallow. You take what you can carry: 4 jugs of ancient motor oil, a 5-liter metal can of something flammable enough to make your hands itch through the gloves, a chunk of copper tubing you'll need for the distillation coil. On the way out, you spot a tipped-over moped. The tank's got a little slosh in it. You siphon a pint out with a length of plastic tubing. Old fuel, yes, but it's still useful. Think of it like seasoning. You don't eat expired salt, but it can still make the rest of the stew taste like not complete garbage. By the time you're back at your shelter, you've got the makings of a chemistry set that would make OSHA sob, and this is just the start. You don't have a lab, you don't even have a decent workbench anymore. What you have is a pile of cinder blocks, a busted metal drum, and a healthy disrespect for the laws of thermodynamics. Perfect. The heart of our operation will be a crude distillation rig, the same basic principle used in oil refineries, whiskey stills, and back alley meth labs. Heat your feedstock, separate it into fractions, keep the stuff that burns the way you want, and discard the sludge that either clogs your carburetor or melts your eyebrows. First, the drum. This will be your boiler. You prop it up on cinder blocks to make a fire pit underneath. The inside is lined with a sticky black residue, which means it's already seasoned with carbon. You drill a hole near the top and jam in that copper tubing from earlier. This will carry the vapors out to cool and condense. Next, the condenser. In a perfect world, you'd have a water-cooled coil and a clean metal tank to catch the distillate. In this world, you've got an old car radiator you found in a ditch. You hook the copper tubing into one end, wrap the radiator in wet cloth, and pray that whatever's growing in there dies in the heat. The collection vessel? An empty paint can with a dent the size of your fist. Just don't confuse it with the paint can you keep your drinking water in. That's a mistake you only make once. Now for the safety lecture. Not because it'll stop you from doing this, but because I like saying "told you so" from beyond the grave. Ventilation. You're about to create a fog of flammable vapor. Do this outside, away from your shelter, your food, and anyone you're on speaking terms with. Ignition control. No smoking, no sparks, no casually rubbing 2 sticks together near the rig like some idiot caveman. Fire plan. Have water or sand nearby. Gasoline fires laugh at water, but it's better than nothing. By sundown, the rig is ready. The drum squats over its cinder block throne like a steel toad. The copper tubing snakes away into the radiator, dripping into the paint can. It looks like something that should be illegal. It was illegal. Now it's Tuesday. Next time we'll light this thing up and start coaxing liquid fire out of the sludge. If we survive, we might even toast to it, with something that doesn't catch on fire in the glass. There's a moment before you light it where you almost reconsider. Almost. The drum sits there, squatting like a pregnant steel beast, full of old motor oil, a splash of scavenged solvent, and just enough questionable fuel to tempt fate. The copper tubing glints dully in the grey light, coiled into the radiator like the world's most dangerous party decoration. You crouch down, match in hand, but not a strike anywhere match. Those are gone. You're using a half-burnt candle stub, lit from your one precious storm lighter. If the flame dies mid-process, you're gonna have to rub sticks together until your arms fall off, and I'm not narrating that. The fire catches in the pit beneath the drum. Old pallet wood, scraps of rubber, a little gasoline from the moped's leftovers for good measure. The flames lick upward, painting the underside of the drum with flickering orange. And then you wait. The oil heats slowly, the way bad ideas always do, until the smell changes, from heavy and greasy to sharp, almost sweet. That's when you know it's starting to vaporize. You put your hand near, not on, the copper line. Warm, then hot. Then don't touch this if you want fingerprints hot. Inside, molecules are breaking apart, lighter fractions slipping into the copper tubing and rushing toward the radiator. The first drops appear in the paint can, pale yellow, shimmering like gold in a cursed fairy tale. You lean in for a sniff, instantly regret it. Your sinuses feel like they've been sandblasted with turpentine. Perfect. You keep the fire low. Too hot and you'll scorch the lot, ending up with tar and disappointment. Too cold and you'll just be staring at a paint can of nothing. You feed the flames bit by bit, the drum groaning softly as it expands in the heat. Every few minutes you hear the drip, drip, drip of your new lifeline. Each drop is liquid defiance, a middle finger to the apocalypse itself. You imagine pouring it into the generator, hearing it cough to life, watching the single light bulb in your shelter flicker on. But not yet. We're still mid-process, and there's a fine line between homemade gasoline and homemade funeral pyre. Hours later, though it could be minutes, time feels strange when you're sitting next to a fire that could turn you into a cautionary tale. you've got a quart of pale yellow liquid in the paint can. That's your crude product. It's fuel, yes, but it's also loaded with microscopic debris, maybe some water, and possibly the molecular equivalent of a loaded gun. If you pour this straight into an engine, you might get 10 seconds of glorious life before it seizes, coughs, and dies. So, filtering. In the old days, you'd use fancy paper filters, chemical dryers, maybe a centrifuge. Now, you've got an old t-shirt, a funnel made from the neck of a plastic bottle, and half a bag of sand. You set up the filter station away from the fire, because pouring flammable liquid next to open flames is how your obituary ends up being both short and hilarious. The sand goes into the funnel first, then the t-shirt stretched over the mouth to catch the larger chunks. You pour slowly, the liquid threads through the cloth, trickles over the sand, and drips into a glass jar you liberated from a long-dead pantry. The smell is potent. It feels like your brain cells are filing for early retirement one whiff at a time. When you're done, you hold it up to the light, or what passes for light through the thick clouds. Clearer, still yellow, but not murky. That's good. You know it'll still burn dirty, but that's fine. This isn't about perfection. It's about getting a machine to turn, a spark to catch, a moment of noise in the endless silence. As the jar fills, you catch yourself smiling. It's not joy, it's the satisfaction of knowing you've just pulled something powerful out of the wreckage, something that can keep you alive. Or, if you're unlucky, something that will blow you to pieces. In the next round, we'll see if this fuel is the magic bullet, or just the last bullet in your chamber. Now comes the question, what gets the honor of drinking your Frankenstein fuel first? You've got 3 candidates: the generator, small engine, temperamental, the one machine keeping you from freezing or talking to yourself in complete darkness. The dirt bike, faster than walking, louder than you'd like, and it leaks oil like a politician leaks promises. The lawnmower, useless for cutting grass. The grass is dead, but expendable enough that you won't cry if it melts into modern art. You decide on the lawnmower. Why? Because you're not a complete idiot. If this goes sideways, you'd rather lose a mower than lose the only transportation that doesn't require you to eat half your body weight in calories to operate. The thing is sitting in the back corner of your shelter under a tarp that smells like mildew and regret. It's a relic from the before times. Red paint faded to the color of rust, pull cord frayed like an old nerve, but the engine's still intact. Maybe you drain whatever nightmare sludge was in the tank before. It comes out black, chunky, and smelling like the devil's cologne. You make a mental note to dispose of it far away from camp, or give it to someone you don't like. Then you pour in your freshly filtered brew. It glugs in with a smooth, honey-thick consistency that makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, you made something too potent. The fumes waft up, catching in your throat, making your eyes water in that special, I've shortened my lifespan by a year way. The tank is barely half full, but it's enough for a test. You wheel the mower out into the open street, far from anything you'd like to keep non-charred. You stand there, hand on the pull cord, wondering if this is the moment you either bring back the hum of an engine, or end up as a small sooty crater in the asphalt. You give the cord a yank. Nothing. Second yank. Still nothing, but the engine coughs, a wet, phlegmy sound like it's been sleeping through the end of the world. Third yank, and the thing barks. Not a roar, not yet, but a warning growl that says, yes, I can explode at any moment. You pump the primer bulb once, twice. You're not sure if that helps or just makes the carburetor angrier, but you do it anyway. Fourth yank, boom. Not an explosion, more of a thunk in the engine's chest, followed by a steady, uneven rumble. The mower is alive. The exhaust coughs out in great grey clouds, smelling like a burning tire factory, but it's running. You stare for a moment, half expecting it to just die again, but the idle steadies into a deep, rattling hum. You've done it. You've taken dead oil, scavenged solvents, and your own questionable decision-making, and turned it into something that burns. You push the mower forward a few feet. The blades don't spin, which is good, because there's nothing to cut but cracked concrete and bones. But the wheels turn, the engine stays on. It's a victory. A small, dirty victory, but a victory nonetheless. The fuel burns hot, maybe too hot. You can hear the metal pinging as it expands. You don't care. You let it run for 10 full minutes, just listening to the mechanical heartbeat fill the empty street. Then, just to prove a point, you shut it off. You smell your hands. They reek of fuel, smoke, and accomplishment. You might never get that smell out, but you'll remember this moment every time you light up another fire in the apocalypse. Next, we move on to something that actually matters, feeding this fuel to the generator, because surviving is nice, but surviving with lights on, that's luxury. The generator is a temperamental beast. It's not just a machine. It's a moody old god that demands tribute in the form of clean fuel, steady hands, and whispered promises. In the old world, people used them for tailgates, camping trips, or keeping the beer cold during power outages. Now, it's the difference between heat and hypothermia, between hearing the static of your radio or just the scraping of rats in the dark. You drag it out from its corner in the shelter, scraping its metal feet over the cracked concrete floor. It's heavier than you remember. Every pull feels like you're dragging an anchor through the ruins of your own patience. The tank is bone dry, the cap dust caked. You twist it off and stare into the void, then you tip in your homebrew gasoline. It sloshes inside with a rich, sharp scent that practically hisses flammable in your ears. You check the oil, surprisingly, still clean. You give the air filter a half-hearted blow to shake out the grip. The starter cord hangs limp at the side, looking like it's ready to snap in two. You pause, listening to the silence outside. In the distance, something moves. A scrape, a shuffle. Not wind. You tell yourself it's far enough away to not matter. You're lying, but you pull the cord anyway. The generator coughs, sputters, and almost turns over. You try again. This time it catches. A deep, vibrating rumble that you feel in your ribcage. The sound is alien now, after months of stillness. It's mechanical, it's warm, it's alive. The lights in your shelter flicker, hum, then flare bright for the first time in weeks. You feel every shadow in the corners shrink back in defeat. For a moment, the apocalypse doesn't feel so final, and then you hear it, faint, distant, but real. Something else heard the noise. In the wasteland, sound is currency. You spend it, you better get something in return, because someone's always listening. You stand by the generator, watching the power flow into your little world. The radio crackles, the electric hot plate warms under your hand. The single bulb overhead hums like a captive sun. It's intoxicating. You almost forget the other rule of this place. Every luxury has a price. That shuffling noise you heard before, it's closer now. You kill the light and strain your ears. Something's brushing against the corrugated fence. Could be wind, could be a scavenger with bad timing, could be one of them, the kind that doesn't talk, doesn't bargain, just takes. You can't risk shutting down the generator yet. The battery packs need at least another 15 minutes to charge if you want to keep the radio alive through the night. But every second it runs is another second of broadcasting your position to the entire zip code. Your mind races. Options. Let it run. Risk drawing trouble right to your door. Shut it down, sit in darkness, and lose everything you've just gained. Or get creative. You grab a length of metal pipe and step into the alley behind your shelter, generator growling at your back. If whatever's out there wants a piece of the noise, maybe you can make sure it gets a different kind of welcome. You don't see anything in the shadows, but you hear breathing, low, heavy, wet. It's not the wind. Somewhere, the generator chugs on, oblivious, and you know, deep in your gut, that the fuel you made didn't just bring back power, it brought back attention. Next, we'll see if that attention gets you killed, or if you can turn it into another victory. Because in this world, survival isn't just about making fuel, it's about making sure you live long enough to burn it. The breathing gets louder. It's that kind of sound that crawls into your ears and stays there, ragged, hungry, wet. You tighten your grip on the pipe, but your palms are slick, partly from sweat, partly from whatever residue was left over from siphoning that moped tank. The moon's just a smudge behind the clouds, but there's enough light to make out a silhouette at the edge of the alley. Broad shoulders, jerky movements. The kind of posture that says, I've been sleeping rough in a pile of bad decisions. It's human, or close enough, and they're not alone. A second figure lurches into view, keeping low, scanning. You can feel the weight of their eyes, not on you, but on the soft yellow glow spilling from your shelter window. You could yell, you could run, or you could do what passes for strategy in the apocalypse, make the other guy think you're a little too crazy to bother with. So you walk forward, not charging, just steady. You drag the pipe along the wall, sparks dancing off the rust. You let them see the outline of your shadow growing taller with each step. The first one freezes, the second one shifts, and you hear the faintest clink of metal, a blade maybe. You point the pipe toward the generator's noise and yell, runs on blood. Then you grin, slow and unsteady. It's not a lie if they believe it. They hesitate, long enough for you to hear the generator's idle change. The battery packs are nearly charged. The lights in the shelter dip, then surge, and you can almost taste the tension breaking. One figure backs away, the other lingers, head tilted, as if weighing the risk. But when you take another slow step forward, they melt into the darkness. Gone. You don't relax. Not yet. Because leaving doesn't mean they won't come back. It just means they're thinking about how. The generator ran until the battery packs were full, then you shut it down. The silence that followed was louder than the machine ever was. You didn't sleep much. Every creak in the shelter walls sounded like someone leaning in. Every gust through the cracks felt like a whisper you couldn't quite hear. When the pale grey of morning seeps in, you check the perimeter. No bodies, no blood, just a set of muddy footprints near the fence. Big, heavy treads circling once before fading into the street. They didn't get close enough to touch the rig, which means they weren't desperate yet. You pour yourself a cup of water, the closest thing you have to coffee, and sit beside the fuel jar. It's still half full. You swirl it, watching the light catch the oily surface. It's ugly, dangerous, and entirely yours. You think about rationing it. A splash here for the generator, a splash there for the dirt bike when you need to move camp. But you also know fuel is power, and power attracts trouble. So maybe the smarter play is to make more before the first batch is gone. You run through the mental checklist. Feedstock? You'll need more oil, maybe dig deeper into that repair shop. Solvent? Risky, but there's a half-collapsed factory a few blocks east that might still have barrels of the stuff. Firewood? Always. The wasteland doesn't give you heat for free. The footprints are still on your mind. Whoever those people were, they weren't scavenging aimlessly. They smelled the generator, they heard the engine, they knew what it meant. And that means next time you run it, you'd better be ready for visitors who aren't scared off by sparks and bad jokes. Next, we'll get back to the science, because if you're going to survive, you'll need a better, faster, and maybe quieter way to refine fuel. And that means upgrading the rig before the next storm rolls in. The old drum distiller works, but it's a brute. It's loud, it smokes, and it takes hours to squeeze out a single quart of fuel. That's fine if you're just tinkering in the apocalypse, but you're not tinkering anymore. You're competing. Every other survivor with an ear for engine noise is going to start thinking if they can make fuel, they can be taken. So you decide to make it better, smaller, faster, more efficient. In other words, more dangerous. You sketch the plan on the inside of an old cereal box, the faded cartoon mascot grinning beside your pencil scrawl. The idea is to use pressure, trap the vapors long enough for them to really cook before letting them slide through the condenser. More pressure means higher efficiency. It also means a higher chance of the whole rig going pop in a way your neighbors 3 blocks over will hear. You'll need parts, a smaller steel container, airtight, thick walls, preferably not already leaking mystery fluids. Better tubing. The copper line is fine, but if you can find braided steel hose, it'll handle pressure without kinking. A real condenser, something that actually cools vapor on contact instead of eventually letting it trickle down like a lazy drunk. You think about where to find them. The repair shop's been picked clean, but there's an abandoned HVAC supply warehouse on the other side of town. You remember the sign, half torn away, the giant letters still spelling AR against the soot-stained walls. HVAC gear means condensers, tubing, and maybe even a pressure gauge if you're lucky. You sling the pipe over your back, pocket the last mouthful of yesterday's fuel in a glass jar, and head out. The streets are quiet. Too quiet. You've learned that means one of two things. Either trouble's passed through and scared everything off, or trouble's still here. The warehouse looms like a dead whale, its loading bay doors sagging open. Inside, the air is colder, heavy with dust and the smell of damp insulation. The place is a cathedral of dead machines, rusted compressors, bent ductwork, and stacks of coils still wrapped in plastic. You move slow. Places like this are perfect for ambushes. Lots of shadows, lots of blind corners. You grip the pipe tighter, ears straining for anything besides the crunch of your boots. Halfway down an aisle, jackpot. A shelf of copper tubing, coiled like metallic snakes, and beside it, a row of compact condensers still in their cardboard boxes. You cut the copper free with an old hacksaw, the teeth squealing against metal like it's screaming for attention. You've almost got the condenser into your pack when you hear it. A soft clink. Not from you, from the other side of the aisle. You freeze. The sound comes again, closer. Footsteps. You can see the shadow before you see the figure. Tall, lean, moving with the kind of confidence that says they know exactly how to hurt you if they want to. You back toward the loading bay, keeping the pipe in front of you. The figure steps into the light. A woman in a filthy parka, eyes sharp, one hand on the hilt of a machete. She glances at your pack, then at you, then at the condenser still clutched under your arm. No words, just a tilt of the head, a silent question. Are you going to hand it over, or are we going to make this ugly? You smile because you already know the answer. But whether she's going to like it, that's another story. Next, we'll see if you walk out of this place with the parts you need, or leave without your teeth, but with a very memorable story about why you should never turn your back in the wasteland. You didn't hand it over. The woman in the parka had fast hands, but you had desperation, and desperation fights dirtier. A quick feint, a swing of the pipe, and she decided the condenser wasn't worth a fractured jaw. She left with a glare that promised you'd meet again. In the wasteland, promises like that always get kept. Back at the shelter, you assemble the upgraded rig. The smaller steel tank is airtight, the braided steel hose gleams, and the new condenser is compact enough to cool vapor before it has time to think about exploding in your face. The first run is cleaner, faster. The vapors hiss through the line like a living thing, condensing into fuel that's clearer than anything you've made before. You pour the fresh batch into the generator's tank, heart beating harder than you'd like to admit. Out beyond the fence, something answers. A distant shout, maybe human, maybe not. You can't tell. You don't care. The fuel is in your veins now, same as the machines. The voice on the radio sharpens. Survivors, heading north. Bring fuel if you have it. You grin. Fuel you have. Maybe too much. You grab your pack, your pipe, and the last jar of homebrew gasoline, and you're already thinking about the next batch. Because in this world, gasoline isn't just fuel. It's a ticket, a weapon, a promise, and tonight, you're cashing in. The generator roars behind you as you step into the street. The sound follows you into the dark. You survived. For now.